It was a bright morning in London when I, Dr. Watson, dropped by to visit my good friend Mr. Sherlock Holmes. As usual, I found him in his sitting room at 221B Baker Street, deep in thought. But this time, he wasn't alone. Seated across from Holmes was one of the most curious-looking men I had ever seen. He was short and round, with fiery red hair that was almost too red to be real. His face was kind and freckled, but it wore a look of confusion and worry. Holmes looked up as I entered. "Ah, Watson," he said. "You've come at just the right time. Let me introduce Mr. Jabez Wilson." The red-headed man nodded. "Pleased to meet you, sir. I've come to Mr. Holmes with a rather strange problem." Holmes leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Mr. Wilson has been the victim of one of the most unusual tricks I've ever heard of." Mr. Wilson cleared his throat and began his story. He owned a small pawn shop in the city. Business wasn't great, but he managed. What helped most, he said, was his assistant, a clever young man named Vincent Spaulding, who worked for half the usual wages. "One day," Mr. Wilson said, "he brought me an advertisement from the newspaper. It was from something called the Red-Headed-League. It offered good pay for red-haired men like me." "And what exactly did it say?" Holmes asked. Mr. Wilson chuckled. "It said, 'There is a vacancy in the League for a member of the Red-Headed Men.'" Mr. Wilson continued his story, leaning forward in his chair as he spoke. "My assistant, Vincent Spaulding, showed me the newspaper ad and told me I'd be perfect for the job. He nearly dragged me to the address listed. Fleet Street it was. He described arriving at a small office where a line of red-headed men stretched down the block. There were curly reds, rusty reds, orange reds, every shade you could think of. Vincent encouraged him to stay, and soon enough, Mr. Wilson was called inside to meet a man named Duncan Ross. He had red hair almost as bright as mine, Wilson said with a smile. He looked me over and asked a few questions. Then he clapped his hands and said, "You're just the man we need." "What kind of job was it?" I asked, curious now. "All I had to do," Mr. Wilson replied, "was sit in a small office 4 hours a day and copy pages from the Encyclopedia Britannica." That was it. From 10 to 2. I wasn't allowed to leave the room, not even for a moment, and they paid me £4 a week. "For simply copying pages?" I said. "Yes, sir." He nodded. It seemed strange, but the money was real, and I enjoyed the quiet. I did it for 8 weeks straight. But then, one morning, everything changed. "I arrived at the office," Mr. Wilson said slowly, "and the door was locked. A sign was posted. 'The Red-Headed League is dissolved.' Just like that. Gone." Mr. Wilson looked from Holmes to me with wide eyes. I was shocked, I tell you. The League was gone. No warning, no explanation. I asked the landlord about Mr. Duncan Ross, but he said the office had been rented under a different name, and the man had vanished. Holmes tapped his fingers together, deep in thought. "You say your assistant, Vincent Spaulding, encouraged you to take this job?" "Yes, sir. It was all his idea. And while I was away copying those pages, he stayed back at the shop." "Did anything strange happen while you were gone?" Holmes asked. "Well," Wilson said slowly, "Spaulding did spend a lot of time in the cellar. Said he was working on developing photographs." Holmes's eyes sparkled. "Indeed." After a few more questions, Holmes stood. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson. You've been most helpful. I believe we'll solve this mystery quite soon." Once Mr. Wilson left, I turned to Holmes. "What do you make of it?" Holmes smiled. Watson, the Red-Headed League was just a trick. A clever one. We're dealing with a criminal plot, I'm sure of it. Now, let's go out. I want to see this shop with my own eyes. That afternoon, Holmes and I made our way through the busy streets of London until we reached Coburg Square, where Mr. Wilson's pawnshop stood. It was a small, quiet place, squeezed between a bakery and a newspaper shop. Children played nearby, and the air smelled of fresh bread. Holmes walked slowly past the shop, carefully studying everything. Windows, pavement, even the cracks in the sidewalk. Then he tapped his cane sharply on the ground in front of the shop, as if listening for something beneath his feet. Just then, a young man with dark hair and a smudge on his face stepped out of the pawn shop. "That's Spaulding," Holmes whispered. "He's trying to look like an ordinary worker, but I believe we've seen something much more dangerous." Spaulding gave us a quick glance, then disappeared inside. We walked around to the back alley behind the buildings. Holmes knocked on the ground again and smiled. "Watson, I believe there's a tunnel under our feet. I'd bet my pipe on it." "A tunnel?" I said, surprised. "Yes, and I think I know exactly where it leads." Holmes chuckled softly and checked his watch. "Come, Watson, tonight we'll need to meet some friends. We have a robbery to stop." That evening, just as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Holmes and I returned to Baker Street. Two men were already waiting in the sitting room when we arrived. The first was Inspector Jones from Scotland Yard, a serious man with a booming voice. The second was a nervous-looking gentleman in a fancy coat. "This is Mr. Merriweather," Holmes explained. "He's a director at the City and Suburban Bank." "A bank?" I asked. Holmes nodded. "The tunnel leads straight to the bank's vault. Tonight our criminals will try to steal a fortune in gold, but we'll be waiting." He quickly laid out the plan. We would all hide in the bank's cellar and catch the thieves red-handed as they came through the tunnel. Inspector Jones grinned. "We'll bag them nicely, Mr. Holmes. Just say the word." Holmes picked up his lantern. "Then let's go. We've got a vault to guard, and not a moment to lose." That night, Holmes, Watson, Inspector Jones, and Mr. Merriweather crept quietly into the cellar of the City and Suburban Bank. The air was cool and smelled faintly of old stone and metal. A heavy silence filled the room as we settled into the shadows, waiting. Holmes's eyes shone in the dark as he whispered, "Stay alert, this won't be long." Minutes passed slowly. Every creak and drip made our hearts beat faster. Then suddenly we heard a faint scraping noise coming from the floor. A large stone slab slowly lifted, revealing a tunnel entrance. From the darkness, two men climbed out. One was the same Spaulding from the pawn shop, but now we knew his real name. John Clay, one of the most dangerous criminals in London. The other was a tall, strong man helping him. They moved quickly toward a big wooden crate filled with gold coins and bars. Clay smiled cruelly, unaware that Holmes and the others were watching every move. Then Holmes stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "Stop right there, gentlemen. You are under arrest." The two men jumped in surprise and tried to fight, but the police were ready. Inspector Jones grabbed Clay's arm, while Merriweather secured the other man. Clay sneered. "You think you've won? I'm a gentleman by birth, not some common thief." Holmes shook his head. "Gentleman or not, crime is crime." As they were led away, I felt a rush of relief. The mystery was solved, and justice served. With the criminals safely in custody, Holmes, Watson, and I returned to Baker Street. The excitement of the night still buzzed in the air, But Holmes was ready to explain everything. "Watson," he began, "the Red-Headed League was a clever trick, nothing more than a distraction." He looked at me with a smile. "Clay wanted to steal gold from the city and suburban bank. But to do that, he needed to dig a tunnel from Wilson's pawnshop without being noticed." Holmes pointed to a map of the area. "By creating the League and paying Mr. Wilson to spend hours copying books in a locked room, Clay kept him away from the shop. This gave Clay and his helper time to dig the tunnel through the cellar." I shook my head, amazed. "So, the whole League was fake?" "Exactly," Holmes said. "And once the tunnel was ready, the League was suddenly dissolved. That's why Wilson found the office closed." Holmes then described how he noticed small clues: the assistant's strong arms, the strange use of a cane to tap the pavement, and Clay's noble but dangerous nature. "I believe," Holmes added, "that crime and cleverness often go hand in hand, but justice will always win in the end." As I looked at Mr. Wilson, relieved and grateful, I realized once again how brilliant Holmes truly was.